All right. Okay.
So Dan, and
All right. I guess it allows. Okay. And then,
Now I can go back to the Zoom.
Oh,
yeah,
I got all the other door.
This guy.
there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's the next section. Never mind.
All right.
Live.
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to call the meeting to order. We stand for pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Consent agenda, approve the items. 6A, which are the minutes from our last meeting, donation acceptance, and special education. Look for a motion to approve this.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Liam. Colleen. Anybody would like any of those 3 items removed? And vote.
Seven, yes.
Thank you. Motion carried. Code of conduct hearing.
Yeah, just gonna pull it up so we'll visualize some of the changes here. Rick, be able to see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So as you can see, the main changes are in red. I just want to give some commentary on a few of these items. I have mine favored, so part of multitasking. So the first item with regards to the code of conduct, this really just talks about discipline generally, philosophically, and this has to do with incorporating restorative practices when we're dealing with student discipline issues and supporting the needs of students even when they violate the code of conduct. So the language there speaks towards that, which is certainly a philosophy that the administrative team has had well before my arrival. Moving along, there are some additional definitions that are incorporated here, particularly with regard to the definition of bullying. Now they are conflating the definition of bullying and harassment. They give specific criteria for what constitutes bullying, and they put, particularly in this large red area here on the bottom, quite a bit of dialogue in there about cyberbullying. So trying to drill down on that a bit more, which is, of course, necessary. Moving right along, they provide a definition on sexual orientation, which specifies that sexual orientation is determinative of whom a person does or does not feel attraction towards, based on recommendations from NISWA. Moving along, there's some good stuff in here, particularly when it comes to student rights. I know prior to my arrival, the board was engaged in a lot of discussion about civic responsibility with students, and number 3 under A, student rights, to express one's opinion either verbally or in writing, as long as it's in a respectful manner. That is now specified clearly as a right of students. So I think that's certainly pushing towards civic and student engagement, which is a great thing to see. Moving on. There's some linguistic changes here, but some of them have quite a bit of impact too. It really specifies the role of parents in the overall code of conduct. Parents having that co-equal amount of importance in addressing student behavior at home, whereas the administration is able to do that at school. And really encouraging parents under number 10 to be active in sharing concerns with the school proactively, which once again, I think is an appropriate addition to the code. There are several additions for different shareholder groups in the code of conduct, all of them trending towards creating an atmosphere that is more open for students, that accounts for diversity. So you'll see teachers, school counselors, other personnel, principals, administrators, all specify clearly their role in promoting qualities of human diversity in the school. So nice to see that our recently board approved DEI policy is in line also with the code of conduct changes being presented. Moving on to the Dignity Act, it just basically articulates who our DASA coordinators are when they are appointed each time. This is done at the reorg meeting in July. Additional language about promoting diversity for the different shareholder groups. There is some language in here that so we have the student dress code, and then we also have some information with regards to enforcement of the student dress code. So essentially, there wasn't a lot of articulation in the code of conduct about how to appropriately address a student when there is a perceived dress code concern. So I think this is really appropriate language. There's a lot of research about microaggressions that happen when there's a power imbalance between a student and an adult, and the ability to navigate that in a way that still uphold the code of conduct in the building. So I think that's trending in the right direction. Those are the primary substantive changes being proposed in this first reading. Does anyone have any specific items they would like clarification on, or anything I did not bring to your attention?
So this is a first read of this, and we will vote on it at our next meeting.
Sure. When you got the comments, we address it.
Okay.
That's not appropriate?
Yep.
Yes, so when we reach the next meeting, I apologize. Hopefully we'll have everything ready for that. I'm just gonna stop sharing.
Thank you. For good of the cause. Aaron, any?
There are no emails.
Would either of our guests like to speak for good of the cause? Moving on to reports, Superintendents Report.
Yes, so there's a lot to report since I've seen you last. That's the cost, unfortunately, of having one meeting in August versus two. So I will try and keep it as brief as I can. I do have some things I want to share on the screen as well. So I'm going to attempt to multitask here. All right, so we had a lovely opening of school for staff and students. I'm really pleased with the work that everyone put forward. Pleased with just the overall vibe of it. Felt exciting. We didn't feel weighed down, in my opinion, by just the fatigue of the pandemic. It just felt really, really positive. And so one of the first things I wanted to direct your attention to that I did address the board with earlier is that we did launch a district Facebook page around August 24th, just as a way to share with the community, folks who may not be able to get to our buildings as much due to the pandemic, all of the good things happening. And really, so the benefit of having a district Twitter page, in my opinion, is that it can be crowdsourced by our staff. So the staff do lots of wonderful things. And so you've got people, I didn't even do any of this, like this organically happened, the staff sharing different photos of their first day of school today. There's also some good links in there to the community, just trying to prop that up. So before everyone gets vertigo, there's more on here. I encourage you to check it out, but suffice to say, so this is one of the things I wanted to show you. So this is a demo that staff did on the first day, and you can see that's the elementary board that's just like this, but does that. And you can split it into zones. You'll see on this board here in the bottom corner, this little snowflake, and this is actually a gaming platform. And you click on that, and then you can use two fingers to just cycle through all these different options. And there's literally hundreds of thousands of different math, science, English, social studies, you name it, content-based games. And you can run stations around this table. So, you know, if you're in the elementary, for example, where this works really well, you've got math students working, you know, in small groups with the instructor, getting some additional support. You might have a TA doing some tier 2 support. And then you've got these different games. And the neat thing about this board in particular is that when those students complete the different games, it sends their data to an email file the teacher has, and then they have formative assessments to actually know how much learning took place. So we're in a data abyss right now. And so any opportunity we have to find instructional data is a good thing. So just wanted to share some of that with you. It's a very, very cool thing. I think the staff responded positively to having all the different technology offerings available to them. So that's the first thing I just feel really pleased about is just the overwhelming within a 2-week period, just embracing of our Twitter page, just as a way to connect the community and try and communicate a positive message. So that's one thing that I wanted to share with you. In regards to the opening of school to staff, I did take an opportunity to share my presentation with the board. If you were able to look at it, great. Yeah. If not, I did just want to briefly address a few things because for me, they really drive a lot of how I'm viewing this next year to some degree. And I'll give you the Cliff Notes version especially for Martha, who was kind enough to come. But you may recall when I was appointed, I sent staff a survey out. We had 76 responses, which was great. And that really fed a lot of my preparatory work into areas that I think we should lean into and areas that we can maybe improve as a district. So tons of great things happening in the district. And this was really at the end of the COVID year. People were pretty burned out, and they widely indicated strong collaboration, opportunities for leadership in the district, ample technology available, lots of great things. Kids enjoy coming to school, staff do. But once again, there was a desire for clearer communication and a desire to get to know what happens at board meetings a bit more. And then there's all these one-offs that are at the bottom. So I just want to address those really quickly. I did a thought exchange with the community as well. We had 308 participants. They were split into thirds. So third for community, third for students, and third for staff. And this is the workflow of the most interested things. So when I, at the last meeting, said like communication, consistency, clarity, I wasn't necessarily conjuring. I was kind of trying to relate to what the community and the staff had indicated in those surveys. Lots of good data in there. Don't assume everyone knows how things have always been done. If there's new folks in town, try and explain or look at why things have happened historically and if they need to evolve. Most popular thoughts among students address the dress code in grades 6 through 12. And most popular thoughts among students in grades K through 5, more time for reading. And I said earlier, like a lot of them asked if I was sad, and I had never met any of them. That was like the first thing. Do you like chicken? So that was just some of the data. So that led to the communication, clarity, and consistency piece that I was promoting. And then when I talked to staff, I just basically talked about some of the things that I'm going to promote along with the administrative team this year to encourage communication on a consistent basis in the district. So there'll be newsletters, the Twitter page. I'm going to give a state of the district address each year just to kind of reflect on how things are going and what our goals are and how we're working towards them. We have lots of great discussion about what our clarity process is in terms of purpose, process, and outcome. What are we looking for? If we know what success is, how do we know when we find it? So you have to articulate that. And so data has a role to play in that as well. And that's why you may see that I try and bring in quantitative data when I can. But when you're in a pandemic and that's hard to come by, I try and at least bring in qualitative data from folks about how they are perceiving the successes of the district. And then consistency, just different committees that we formulated to ensure that we're doing our best to bridge the distance between the elementary school and the high school, the middle school. So we have our operations committee with all of our supervisors that meets once a month, our technology committee, our admin team meets twice a month, and then we also have union and administrative teams that meet as well, all in the name of promoting consistency. So those one-offs I talked about really briefly, I want to just mention those because they're driving a lot of my thoughts as I enter the year about what staff and the community have indicated are areas that we might want to look into. So the staff absence and coverage issue is one that really has come up quite a bit. There's a lack of subs. Unfortunately, there's a lack of qualified teachers too. And then also there wasn't necessarily a lot of clarity around the system of absence management. So we're trying to clarify that process. We also have started looking at, is it worth hiring some designated building subs for each of our buildings so we can deploy them as needed and keep things as consistent for the kids as possible, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Social emotional learning, there was a strong desire for folks to have social work happening in our school to support the needs of students. That was something that the staff and the community and the students all indicated. It's one of those rare ones that they're looking for that support. Something that I'll talk a little bit about more is COVID educational coordinators. So last year there was tandem instruction where you might have a student at home and in the classroom connected by the teacher via camera simultaneously. This year, so that we don't extract too much from the staff, too much of their attention at once. If a student has to go on remote learning due to isolation, our hope is that these 4 individuals would be tasked with making sure that the students at home are well informed and are getting the supports they need without over encumbering the system at large, because it's hard to run both of those at once. Talked about DEI is an important aspect of our approach moving forward. I discussed the passage of the plan. I know that it happened over the summer, so some of the staff weren't aware of that. And then just more broadly, some of the roles that the DEI committee I see being particularly beneficial for me. So before, the DEI committee was an offshoot of the Board of Education, and the goal was to create a policy under the shared decision-making umbrella. Now that goal has been accomplished, the committee has less of a board role now and more of an implementation role and informing the administration on the best ways that we can try and implement that policy and bring in community voices. So that's kind of how I'm viewing it. Is the DEI committee will do its own work in the community, but I hope also will act in an advisory capacity to me and to the administrative team. Talked about school spirit increasing. That was something that was brought up. Trying to engage student council more, using our social media to galvanize the community around the good work that's happening. And then another biggie, hitting all the hot button issues right now. One of the big ones I know that's come up historically that was brought up in all the surveys was, is it time to unify the start and end time for all schools? I certainly couldn't speak to that now, but I do think that there's an interest for it, and it might be worth looking into and evaluating whether or not that's feasible and whether or not shareholders believe that that would be beneficial to the district. So those were the main things that I discussed. And then more broadly, just our theme this year, which I'm so proud of the administrative team. I got to sit in all of their assemblies today, and Teresa and Tammy and Sonia just knocked it out of the park across the board. It was so cool to see it from all levels of the district, preaching empowerment to our kids. And, so when we talk about empowerment, trying to define it, the way I define it to the staff is, what are the things we do that show you that we trust you, we value you, and we believe in you? And I gave some recommendations to the staff. There are ways that we can do this as employees and colleagues. And then I gave recommendations to the staff about students, and they're literally the same exact things, because they're the same, we're all humans. So if we can find ways to empower our students to take control of their learning, we can find ways as a school to empower our faculty, then it's going to be good for everybody. So that was just some information on the opening of school. I think I just, everything was playing very well. I did send a survey out afterwards to get that qualitative read on, like, was this useful for you or not? We've had 50 responses so far. And one question: do you feel that you were provided with enough time to make preparations for the start of the year? I don't want to ruin the ending for you here, but very often teachers never feel like there's enough time, but you got to put that question in there. The second one: did you feel the focus areas of the 2 days were clearly communicated and the goals of those initiatives were achieved? So that really speaks to that. Was it clear? Was it communicated well? Just thinking about those pieces. So to that end of the responses thus far, about half the staff said there was enough time. About half the staff said there was not. And somewhere in between there were some folks that were not necessarily sure. But this is what I'm particularly proud of, and this really is a testament to the entire administrative team. Of the 50 responses, do you feel that the focus areas of the days were clearly communicated and the goals were achieved of our opening? 86% said yes. Only one person said no, and the others weren't sure. So for me, that's a win. And I just hope that we can channel some of that. And we got some great responses in there too, as well, on like the open-ended responses. What are things that went well? What are things that didn't go well? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how successful do you think things will be? So 7, to 10 being the higher range. Effectively 85% or so feeling that the staff days were very successful, which is great. And then, already thinking about next year, what can we do to improve things? So, there's validity to this. I'm a little bit tongue in cheek about the fact that a select group will never feel like there's enough time, but that's true. And these are the times of the year that are so critical for preparation. So as we look at, calendar and the number of PD days that we offer throughout the year, maybe it's worthy of consideration that an extra half day be taken from somewhere and be provided to the staff. Just food for thought, but just sort of following the data and getting a sense there. So really, I think very successful opening of school for the staff. We had the elementary open house, which occurred on the 2nd, Thursday evening. It was well attended. People complied to the letter with the guidance, which was outstanding. It was a lovely night. There was a barbecue. I had an opportunity to meet a whole lot of people, and I think the evening was a resounding success. So I certainly think the elementary folks did a great job preparing for that. In our opening of school for students today, Teresa did an outstanding job providing an anecdote, speaking about kindness, spilling into that empowerment discussion. Tammy did a wonderful job talking about taking chances and owning our learning. And Sonia did a great job talking about, she quoted Yoda. So there's never a bad time to do that. She said, there is no try, there is only do. She was kind enough to not do an impression, which is perfect. We, in other news, Friday, as we were preparing for the start of school, that was the appropriate time, according to the Department of Health, to drop a massive mandate on us. So thank you. And we are now required to confirm the vaccination status of staff and to test any unvaccinated staff each week effective this week. So this afternoon, we sent a plan out to staff on how they can share their vaccination status to corroborate that. And then by the end of the week, we'll use the Binax 15-minute tests that we have under the capable hands of Nurse Elise and Nurse Cora to test the very marginal population of our staff that are not vaccinated. And they'll continue to have to be tested while this mandate is in place. I don't know if you saw in your NISPA communiques, but there was under, I believe the first act passed by the legislature under Governor Hochul was to suspend the open meetings law. So that is a board preference, I believe. So should the numbers increase in the county and there be a concern about limiting public participation in person in the meetings, it's something that the board can certainly evaluate and consider. There is a community day coming up on the 12th. All right, Martha, could you speak briefly? Sorry to put you on the spot, but just about the focus of this event, because I think it's great.
Community Day was established by a group of volunteers, and the purpose is to celebrate people who live in Lake Placid and serve all the guests and visitors. We who are the hosts don't often get treated, so Community Day is a free celebration for locals.
It's at the horse show ground, right?
Yes,
Wonderful. And you're going from horses to ducks, correct? Or ducks to horses, I should
ducks to
say?
horses.
So on the 11th, we have a duck race as well, yes?
Yeah.
Okay, and that's at Lisa G's.
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, so lots of good stuff coming down the pike. In other news, athletics is off and running. Our numbers, according to our athletic director, John Burdick, as of the 3rd, we have 20 varsity cross-country students, 7 modified cross-country. We have 15 boys varsity soccer players. We have 16 boys modified soccer players. We have 16 girls varsity soccer players. We have 10 girls modified soccer there. And of course, 10 isn't enough to fill a field. So we have a handshake understanding with the teams that we compete against that they will pare their numbers down for equity on the field so that those scrimmages can still occur for the students. Varsity volleyball, we have 10. JV volleyball, we have 11, and modified volleyball, we have 11. And here's just some brief anecdotal information from Mr. Burdick. There's been a drop in the percentage of students competing in sports at all levels. Large schools and small schools seem to be struggling to maintain the teams that they have always had. At least 7 schools in the CBAC have had to notify the league that the numbers do not support a team they usually have. I believe this is caused by a number of reasons: smaller enrollments, video gaming, and COVID. So we thank Mr. Burdick for his report. We wish our student athletes success and domination in conference. Music. So some exciting news to share here. We have not one but 2 of our high school students in the mixed chorus that have been given quite the honor. They have been given admittance to the All-State NISMA competition. And Tammy, I'm told this has not happened in some time, correct?
Right.
So Andrew, is it Scanio? Scanio, an 11th grader who's a bass in the mixed chorus, and Hannah Wiley, a 12th grader who's an alto in the mixed chorus. And I asked Mr. Prosper for just some words about these students. Until I get to know them, I'd like to be able to offer them sufficient praise. Both Hannah and Andrew performed a solo at the Level 6 All-State solo this past year's NISMA Solo Festival. Those solos were 5 to 7 minutes in straight Italian. Their efforts earned both of them a perfect score and admission into the NISMA Conference All-State Honors Ensemble. This is not something that happens often, and it is rare to have representation from our small school, let alone to have 2 students in 1 year. They truly have competed well against powerhouse districts in Syracuse, Rochester, and Long Island. Both of these students are tirelessly hardworking and will always put their best foot forward. I can't be more proud to have them in our program here at LPCSD. Look forward to their participation in the event in Rochester in December. Very cool.
Best of luck to both of them.
Absolutely. And just on a final note, speaking to the hearts and minds thing, the middle school, high school introduced the Positivity Project this year, which is just a way to try and galvanize students and staff around common ideals of the best of humanity. So I know one of the focus areas this month is Other People Matter. At the PBIS program at the elementary school, the theme for the young students is self-control for September. So having participated in the assemblies today, I think that was a timely choice. But all joking aside, kids are awesome, the staff are outstanding. It's been a good couple of weeks since I've seen you.
Thank you, Tim.
Tim, I have a question. I don't know if we're allowed to ask students or the families. Do we know if what the percentage is for our grade 7 through 12 students who have been vaccinated over the summertime? I don't know if we're allowed to ask that or not, but I'm just curious what percentage of our student population that could be vaccinated are.
Do we have a sense, even if it's just like not a dipstick read? What do we
Yeah, I think that we are well over 60% 7 to 12.
That's great. Wonderful. Yeah.
And certain grades are higher percentages.
Okay. No, that's good to know.
Okay, next is information for the board. In there we have the NISBA convention registration information. Karen also handed us a postcard here tonight about it. Our October 5th meeting in Wilmington. Wilmington's space is smaller than this room, so thoughts on holding it not in Wilmington, just staying here in Placid? Is that
Does that sound okay to everyone?
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate, but I think we gotta do it. Like, I do like our Wilmington meetings. Usually get such good community participation too.
People could Zoom. I don't know how important it is to people down there that we go there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it means a couple of board members Zooming. I don't know.
So the other thing is we all sit around one table.
I'm probably not having it there.
It's way too small for this group. Is my 2 cents.
Karen, you're right. They have that, just that one table.
right?
And they're all really impacted.
Right.
Unless we're gonna
mean-
wheel this. clean cut
I'll put it in my car. Right.
So we'll look at rescheduling October 5th to be in Lake Placid instead of Wilmington.
Thank you.
And also under there, under executive content, Tim is explained out some staffing and substitute ideas that he has. I don't know if we want to discuss those now or.
I think what you're gonna find is, it's rare that you have a problem and a revenue stream colliding at the same time. But that's what we have with the next agenda item, or two after the board objectives, the American Rescue Plan. We have a mandate to spend $711,000. And so these problems, I do articulate some as potential options for the board to consider. So if we want to wait until then, I can certainly float it.
Okay. Okay, moving on then to discussion, board goals and objectives. Um, Everybody got one last meeting. I didn't see any comments or things that went around. Erin, were there any?
Rick sent this to me, so I did not receive anything directly. Rick, do you want to talk to that?
Sure. I got one. Martha sent me one in the mail with some comments on it. There were some additional comments in the Google documents that I extracted out. So there are some changes in the document that you have in front of you. Some additions. I did take under communications, and unfortunately, I don't have that document in front of me, but under community outreach, for example, I took Tim's idea of doing a post-board meeting highlight. Not sure if that's a board, well, yes, I would say that's a board directive, making that happen, the specifics of which open to discussion with or about those type of things. So I would take the opportunity to look over the couple of things that have changed in there. My only question in reviewing is under finance. The fifth bullet reads, continue to conduct district business in a professional and ethical manner, seeking efficiencies and collaboration possibilities. I'm not sure where that came from, but if does anybody want to offer any more substance to that statement?
There's a lot of substance. I agree with you.
I'm not sure how we would measure that. That's my, I guess, my ultimate question. Are there efficiencies to be had? Are there collaboration possibilities to be had? Are we talking about, merging softball teams? Or are we talking about merging Science Olympiad or something like that? None of those are true, of course. I'm just throwing those out there.
Or is this related to like the audit, that the audit always comes back without issue?
Okay. Yeah, that I guess that is a good way of looking at it from the professional and
It's
ethics.
measurable, yeah.
Yep.
And then it's measurable.
It is,
It does.
definitely. Okay, well, that's if everybody's comfortable with that, I was just looking for a little more input on was there thought to efficiencies and collaboration possibilities? As I say, I don't have the Google Docs in front of me right here, but whoever might have suggested that if there was thoughts to it. If not, that's the document had it in its entirety.
I think you did a great job, Rick, of putting it all together and synthesizing it and taking out the verbosity. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Yes, thank you, Rick, for putting it all together.
Thanks for everyone who contributed. Appreciate it. Makes it easy.
So we will have a chance to vote on that and adopt it later in the meeting here. Next is the American Rescue Plan.
So I got some more visuals. I apologize. Anyone who's been in my office, it looks like a conspiracy theory done at this point. there's a lot of Post-it notes on the wall. I'm a visual person by nature, so I try and operate in the areas for which I feel most comfortable. So the American Rescue Plan, Dana and I are going to try and kind of contextualize a lot of this and then provide some consideration and context for some discussion with the board. So what is the American Rescue Plan? Well, March 2021, the rescue plan became law in the Biden administration. $122 billion was earmarked for all of the states. New York received $8.9 billion. And LPCSD will receive an allocation of $711,446. Great.
Did we apply for that?
Nope, it is all of the, well, there's a technical application, isn't there, Dana, where you do the assurances, right?
Correct. I mean, this is what's allocated, but until we actually apply and get it approved, the money is just there. So if we don't go through that process, we can lose the money.
Who gets the interest?
What interest?
Does it earn interest?
We don't get it all at once now. It's sort of like our other federal programs where when we get it approved, they give us 20% upfront, sort of like seed money. And then as we spend the allocation based on the program that they approved, we can submit, in essence, reimbursements. So it's very similar to our other title programs. Where once it's all done, we submit our final documents to get the final payment.
What is the end date for spending the money?
I have that in there. I believe it's March 2023, but I keep calling this Brewster's Millions. Like we've got 2.5 years to spend all of this, or I don't know. You've seen the movie, you don't get a baseball team or something. But to the broader point, this is a windfall for the district that is advantageous, and it is actually the sister grant of something called CIRSA, which was designed. I know the district received, was it like 400 something thousand for that, Dana?
316,000.
316 for that, and that was to address specific operational impacts of COVID. This is really addressing what they're calling pandemic learning loss.
If I could, the CISRO money, it was actually it's in our current budget. It's a revenue source. If you remember from the budget, $316,000 is specifically the allocation for this, which has been approved, and we received the first 20%, $63,000.
Awesome. So Dana's going to help us kind of contextualize this. What does $711,000 mean for LPCSD? And really, this was as much an exercise for me to understand as for me to assist you in reviewing this information. Dana, why don't you talk to us a little about what you put together here?
You see these categories, and these categories are basically the major categories. Come budget time, this is how it's usually broken down to show you kind of where the expenses are. So I went back technically 3 years. You'll notice 2020 is not there. That was the COVID year. We skipped over it because really it's an outlier. We had a $1.3 million surplus that year. So to kind of show you or use that as a comparison wouldn't give it justice. So I went back to 2019, so 19 and 21 in terms of more truer expenses, and then what we have budgeted for 2022. And you can see, just like with the budget process, the salaries and benefits, that's the driver. 13, almost $14 million of our $20 million budget comes from those two items. Materials, we typically budget right around that 330 to 350 range. We have not spent all of our material budgets over the last 5-7 years. But again, you build in all the contingencies in there, and some years we spend a little more, and some years we don't. But if you look at that, we're spending on average about $280,000 a year for materials, and that's your supplies, your pens, your pencils, your paper, not, things that teachers would typically order on any given year is really what that comes down to when it comes to materials and supplies. It's your the stuff that we would go through year in and year out. They're consistent expenditures for materials. Equipment, it's just that it's our hardware that we spend right across the board, whether it's Chromebooks, laptops, desktops, equipment through the bus garage, maintenance, custodial staff. You'll see in 2021 definitely a jump up of a little more than $20,000, and part of that is we have been using some of our reimbursements for SSBA, so we saw some expenditures there, as well as we purchased a tractor for the elementary school at the end of last year's budget because with the surplus, things like that. So these are the truly the hardware aspects of that equipment. Contractual, these are all the things that for the most parts are annual, annual payments that we make. All of our contracts with North Elbow, with both, not with BOCES, but Spectrum, our utilities, that's all of our contractuals. You can see again in the 2019, huge $800,000 versus 646. That ebbs and flows depending on what we're buying each and every year. And then you can see our BOCES expenses. Depending on the year, the BOCES in 2019 much higher than what was last year and what is budgeted. And part of that is also based on enrollments too. As we go through the budget process and we talk about our cost to BOCES, part of that fee is enrollment based. How many kids are going to the BOCES Center for vocational training, things like that, for past program. So even though if you remember over the last couple of years, our contribution to BOCES has gone up something like $200,000 over the last 2 years. But if you look at it, our enrollment trend is starting to tick down. But obviously with their price adjustments as well, they get paid their staff, and their staff gets increases in salaries. So even though our numbers are going down, it seems like the price is going up. It's just because that's what the cost of doing business in a service industry. And then textbooks. You look here with the textbooks, we do get some reimbursements on that as well. That goes through a state aid. So every year, our software and textbooks, we do get money back from the state for that.
So Dana, between the 2021 expense under salaries and then is that your anticipated budget for 2022?
Correct.
So it's $1 million jump, is that typical?
Yeah, well, if you look at it, 19 and 21, those are our actuals, and 22 is what is budgeted. So, and we typically have been budgeting for the last couple of years, the high 8s, low 9s is what we budget. You would look at it and say, geez, it's $1 million difference. Are we budgeting too much for it? But you never know in terms of when someone takes a leave, or we have to hire people during the year and stuff like that. So there's always a little cushion because of the unknowns. A family could move into the district that is requiring multiple TAs, things like that. So we try to anticipate those expenses so that we can service the students the best we can.
Thanks, Dana. That's awesome. So $711,000, 2.5 years. We can buy a ton of textbooks, but will that be the best thing to address pandemic learning loss? Paying the Spectrum bill might be a good idea, but once again, is that the most appropriate use of these funds? So let's talk a little bit about the rules of the game from the federal perspective, the allowable uses, if you will. So these funds may be used to hire staff to address student needs and impacts of the pandemic, to improve technology and infrastructure, to provide social, emotional, and academic supports to students, and to promote or uphold health mandates such as social distancing. So these are, in speaking with my colleagues, this is actually the second iteration of this process. Prior to my previous role, I laid out the plan for that district. So I've had an opportunity to look at this through different lenses already with different amounts as well. So the budget narrative is due September 30. So we don't have a tremendous amount of time. And all of our spending will take place within a 3-year time frame, concluding in March of 2024. And a minimum of 20% must clearly address pandemic learning loss. I want to pay attention, especially though, to evidence-based interventions. So how can we validate the spending in a way that shows that it will impact student learning positively? And that's really the most important part of this presentation for me. How do we define pandemic learning loss? It's a pretty ambiguous term. So the way I have been viewing it is it's any disruption to student learning, to our operational capacity, or to our improvement planning brought about or exacerbated by the pandemic. Does everyone feel like that might be a good working definition? Because there isn't one.
I think it's a good start.
Because once we know how to define the problem, then we know how to solve it. So that's very, very much important. Shareholder input. So I'm just very lucky that in coming in, I was given a wealth of qualitative data from different groups about what they would like to see happen. And so the administrative team, we did a brainstorm together. You know, if we could do things to improve students and address pandemic learning loss in a budgetless world, what would those things be? And so there's a lot on here. Outdoor learning, hiring social workers, extending the libraries. I don't know what a Zen den is, but I want one. All good things. And then just circling back to what the staff indicated when I sent the survey out in June, they indicated a desire to improve our technology for PD and trauma training for staff, finding ways to incentivize substitute teaching to decompress the system with people covering, hiring a social worker, aligning our teaching to the standards. The standards keep changing every several years. They don't necessarily communicate the rollout in a way for teachers and provide enough time for that work to happen. And they're really, like, from a teacher's perspective, the hard part about standards in New York State is that they just give you too many of them. And you don't have enough time, and they don't tell you that they've given you too many. And so teachers are often rule followers. That's why we've been able to stave off transmission of the pandemic. And as rule followers, we want to get through all the content, but there's too much in the cup. So how do we figure out what to remove and what's impactful for students? That's the challenge. And that's a process. By the time you figure out what standards are important and what to teach to, you change them again. So it's very frustrating. It's an iterative process. That's very frustrating. So with that in mind, then, we can't necessarily live and die by the standards educationally. We also have to live and die by what is beneficial for students and what are they telling us about their learning. So to do that, we have to have data that's reflective in real time of what our students are doing so that we can make tweaks along the way to our teaching. So that's, when I say align teaching to New York State learning standards, I'm really talking about increasing the role of data, not in a way that makes students a number, but in a way that says to teachers, here are a few basic practices you could do to get Johnny from this level to this level. And having those at your fingertips is crucial. And then flexible learning spaces, outdoor learning spaces, were other things that the staff indicated would be beneficial from their perspective. So that's administration and faculty and staff. What did the community say during the thought exchange? They love the after-school programming. They love the arts. and they're big fans of student enrichment and supports. So trying to be mindful of that. And then also of great importance, of course, the input of the Board of Education. So, my hope at the conclusion of this presentation is that you share some thoughts of things that you think would be beneficial to the district at large. And I incorporate that into this planning process too. So, September 30th, we've got to write the thing. So that takes some time too. Which basically means that we have a meeting on the 21st, and my hope is that we can come with a proposal that's reflective of all the shareholders, including the board, that would benefit students during this 2.5-year spending frenzy, if you will. So here are some of the things that we've kind of put thought to. I tried to categorize this by pandemic disruptors that are known and possible solutions. And I didn't derive this list myself. This was done collaboratively with the administrative team. This was me extracting different points from the data that I've gotten to date. So we know social distancing has to continue. That's affecting lunch coverages. It's affecting how students sit and where, how we teach. And so having flexible seating options that are movable, that are engaging for students would be beneficial. We've already purchased tents for outdoor learning. On your way out of here, if you look to the left, the middle high entrance, on the side, you'll see one of them. There's one there, there's one in front of the school, and we purchased one for the elementary school as well. We know that kids need to spend time outside during this pandemic, but still move their learning forward. The CYC survey that one of our attendees at a previous meeting brought up several times, that discussed some of the mental health concerns that we have with students. And so with that increased anxiety and trauma, once again, really that social worker piece, trying to support student needs during this stressful time. We have an increased need for engaging instructional technology. So looking at purchasing units such as this one that we're displaying, smart boards, continuing to upgrade our technology, but not buying them all at once, having it on a 5-year life cycle plan so that as we look to replace, it's not hitting the district all at one time. So increased reliance on technology. During the pandemic, the district had a one-to-one rollout of devices. Prior to that, that didn't happen. So devices were on carts. They were used in the classroom. Now students and staff have a device at their hands all the time. So that's 700 opportunities for an IT person to need to be involved and 0 additional IT people brought on board for that challenge. We're also fending off North Korea on the regular and cyber extortion threats and building a server, the list goes on. So we can't have technology and provide professional development if we don't have the infrastructure HR-wise to support that effort. That's a critical area, in my opinion. Lack of reliable instructional data. So normally we would get what's called a Cognos report from the state for the Regents exams. And then we're able to analyze certain questions and do like question analysis. Now, I'll just note that it's a post-mortem. So the kids have already moved on. It's like the 9th grade teacher has to look at the 8th grade data to see how to move those students, but not even take into account what happened in the summer. So those reports aren't necessarily reflective of reality. And so, having additional data and having the infrastructure in the district to analyze that data and make recommendations with the staff, that's the stuff that moves students several levels. That's the stuff that really has instructional power for kids. And putting my teacher hat on, having that information and being able to support kids without actually, it's tough. Like sometimes you're just throwing darts and you're in the classroom, you're going through the content and so-and-so may need help, but you can't specify on what item. And to have that clarity and the infrastructure to support that is wonderful. So looking at, who in our district has chops that can help support bringing data more to the fore and helping to compile that data and allow us to analyze it to reflect practice. We have an increased staff absence issue, and a decrease in available subs. So, another critical area is looking at building coverage. So in my previous role, we hired 2 designated building subs, and it was a district that was smaller than this one. And what ended up happening was, first and foremost, those folks were used all the time. The need doesn't go away. But more specifically, in the course of a year, a teacher might suddenly need to take a leave of absence. A teacher might suddenly be ill and or go on maternity leave, and these things wouldn't be planned. So to have the infrastructure to absorb that immediately with folks that are part of the system, there's just a tremendous benefit to that in providing consistency to staff and student. So I'm an advocate of this. It's not cheap. I mean, to bring each of these folks on at this time of the year, you're talking about $35,000 or $40,000. So to get one for each building, it might be $120,000. I probably wouldn't aggressively propose something like this if it wasn't Brewster's Million season, but big challenges, big windfall. It's just fortuitous from my perspective to try and just share what I think would be the very best thing we can do to address the problems. And then just the new challenges and opportunities for staff. Our whole theme this year is empowerment. And I'm encouraging staff to follow their interests. If they find there's a way to engage students, then let us know about it. And if that way is going to entice them to learn more, but it costs money, I don't want that to be the definitive reason why we're not doing things for kids. So those are some of the suggestions and some of the disruptors.
Tim, it's only my own opinion, but I personally feel that the staff absences and the subs are probably the most important thing on that page. I'm looking at Teresa and Tammy, and they're probably agreeing, because that just has to be such a predicament on a daily basis. It's who's calling out sick today, where's the lunchroom, where is she filling in what classroom, where's Teresa running into what room. That's got to be really difficult. But there was another slide that you had on there previously, and it was math RTI, and I'm guessing it's probably for the elementary school. And you don't know this, Tim, but I've lobbied for the last 2 or 3 years for a full-time math RTI person in the elementary school.
Mr. Burdick's presently half-time, right?
He's half-time, and just speaking with Sonia over that couple-year period, it was something that at the time, many of the teachers felt was very much needed in the building. And because we have a full-time literacy RTI person, and
Sure.
It was based on test scores, and certainly if there's any one of the subject areas that probably was impacted during COVID and the disruptor was probably math.
Oh my gosh, yes. It
And
doesn't
so
translate in the home like it does with like.
I just think that that's probably where we're going to put a little bit of whatever that million thing that you just.
Sorry, if you haven't seen the movie, I keep referencing.
No, I
it, so
haven't-
sorry.
I haven't
It's
seen
a
it,
Richard
but
Pryor movie.
if
Yeah,
we're
Probably
gonna-
not even appropriate for this.
If we're gonna throw some money in that direction, it may be hard to find a person, but I just feel like that math RTI person for the younger students. I don't know, I just think if we now have some money, maybe that's the place I could put it, but I definitely feel that the substitute teachers is an important place.
That's great. What other areas does the board members feel would be advantageous, or is there something on this list that shouldn't be, or something you'd like to add?
Does the social worker, is that something that we can tap into, because Essex County already goes out into the community and they're on their payroll? Is that something that we can tap into, that where they come to the district on Essex County hours instead of us expending our funds for that? I don't know, but I know they go other places.
Sure,
and-
that's a great question. Yeah, there's 2 models, right? Well, 3, I guess, if you include both these 2. So controlling the individual outright and deploying them as needed, trying to take a piece of what Essex County does, or buying a portion of an individual for the BOCES as well. So those are all possible. It's just the needs assessment thing. I'm keen, and I've actually asked Teresa for our next meeting to discuss the trends in the CYC data that have happened in the survey over the last several years to get a sense of scope. Is this something that can be done in partnership with Essex County or BOCES, or is the need so manifest that we really should look at our own employee? So it's a great question. I don't have the answer presently, but you're good to think about
That's probably those collaborations that thing in the goals was tracked up.
that.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely, because I know that we have this year that we brought on someone per diem, an extra psychologist in addition to like Dr. Miller that we have here at the school. And we have Tara Wright that we brought on, we're going to possibly use per diem. So I don't know what her role is, and if we should be tapping into that she's already contracted with that. I don't know.
It's interesting because like when you talk about addressing student needs, you've got basic counseling, and then you have social work's in a different ballpark altogether, because it's really blurring that home school line to a large degree. Some districts have behavior specialists. Some utilize psychologists in a similar fashion. So I think if we're looking at social workers as a predominant need, it's telling us a lot about either what we don't know what's going on at home for kids, or that we do know and it's worrisome and we need to address it as a district. That has less to do with our circle of control and more about what's happening the other 14 hours of the day.
And then I didn't see the summer school on it is.
That's right. So, and summer school falls within the scope of all of this. In fact, that's some of the easiest ways to expend funds is summer enrichment programs. So you kind of cut at something interesting, Liam, because there's two philosophies generally on how to spend this money. The first is to offset existing costs and then to leave the additional funds in the general fund. The second is to provide additional supports that may be lacking in the district to address specific concerns. So we already do summer school and enrichment, right? Right, Dana? And so we budget for that accordingly. So if we wanted to run this past year and the next 2 years of summer programming under this, we could. And what that would do is just leave additional funds in our general fund for us to deploy for some other cause. But that's budgeted for the year either way. So
Yeah, but wasn't this summer we ran a more beefed up summer school? Essentially, the door, it was open to anyone? Any students or no?
can you articulate the difference? Because I wouldn't have the context on that.
Summer school is always open to anybody who wants to come. Our numbers this year were definitely more significant, particularly the middle school, high school, given to the impact of the pandemic.
But that, and so there was already a cost there, whether the costs increased that much for having.
We still had the same number of teachers. We actually struggled this year to get the teacher. We have actually less teachers. So the cost has always remained the same regardless of the number of students that we've had.
The other interesting thing is we have other federal buckets to pull from too. So we have our title funds.
I thought the social worker too, we had another bucket to pull from on the social worker.
We got some, so the last 2 years, we have received a grant from, it's the rural.
Rural Schools Association,
Yeah.
RSA.
So last year, we received $24,000. This coming year, I believe it's $31,000. And that was tied to using Tina Clark for one additional day, contract with the prevention team at Essex County for some home visits. So the first grant, 24,000, helped offset that additional day. And last year was harder because of COVID. Roger asked Tina to write the grants for this current year, which was approved. And we have until I think 2023 to expend that $30,000. But it was specific to offsetting her additional time that we're using Tina for. And hopefully this year we'll see a little more. She will have a little more outreach because of being able to go into the homes. That was just one additional day.
I would say too, the technology technician is going to be very important, especially if you're anticipating bringing in some of this next level technology. I won't mention the district, but I worked for a district that bought a lot of smart boards, but didn't buy the complete systems and then had no one to install them. So they all became regular whiteboards. Very expensive whiteboards.
Yeah.
But, so I would hate for that to happen here. Yeah, I think that definitely with all the additional technology, that might be a good direction to go. Not that the students ever break the laptops at all. None that I know, sure.
Does anything on this list seem like a red herring? You know, is there anything that,
I guess I'd want more information on the district data coordinator, because I would feel like I'd want to align with Colleen on that. That instead of that position, I'd want the math. So
Yeah,
the other school.
I kind of see tandem on them in the sense that RTI is using the data to intervene. And so, like how is the data coming to the interventionists to do that? Because in my experience, what happens is the teachers put pressure on the RTI supporters to follow the chronology of the curriculum that they're doing. So, and it could even be like, can you make sure they get this homework assignment we're doing? But the bang for your buck intervention when it comes to math, reading, all of these, is to enrich the skills that underlie the learning, even if it's not synchronous with what's happening in the classroom. So there's always this like constant struggle to some degree.
But on some level, especially in this category, it seems like they've had enough data over the last several years, probably come to the conclusion that they do need some additional intervention.
Oh my gosh, yeah, without
I
a
kind of
doubt.
agree with Liam on that the RTI person should come before the, I don't know, that's just my thought.
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, you've been advocating since you got here, and I agree with you. And that there's a lot of other stuff going on, and not on the base. I see sometimes to just move away from the basics.
Yeah.
Me writing and
I mean,
arithmetic.
we've seen the scores and they're not really improving. And then what happens is those little ones come up and they land at middle school. And I don't know, I just think it's time, if we have the funds, that we should try to do that. I don't know.
My only issue with that is that we have been discussing it all along, and while I agree with it, does it belong under this rescue plan? Does it fit into this funding?
I mean, we look back at what the definition was. It was right? It was exacerbated.
Yes.
So under that rubric, if it's under the exacerbated, yeah, you know what I'm trying to use.
Yeah.
Yeah, that broadens it up. Yeah, I think it broadens it up. If that's the definition we're using, if not, then I think it should be hardcore. It really has to have the impact from COVID, meaning that it should be technology. These boards should be probably in every classroom. Smart, the after school, the summer school, anything that's directly related, the subs, the building subs, if it's a more direct instead of exasperated.
My only concern is though, yes, we have that money for the next 3 years, but this is going to be longer term with all the students. So in the next 3 years, we're going to have to start increasing the budget to cover these positions when this money's gone.
Mhm.
Because
I don't think math is ever going to be something where we have solid scores and whatever. I always think that's going to be an issue, just like literacy, that there's going to need to be extra assistance in that area. So,
right, but I don't want to bring somebody on and have them here for 2 years and then say, oh, we don't have any more money for you. Sorry, goodbye. I'd rather see it that, we can hold this position and keep it moving forward. So in the budget process, we're going to have to start thinking about this beyond this $700,000.
oh, definitely.
For long term.
Yeah, that's
For
why.
any of these things.
That's why maybe it makes sense that we change the definition. and we make it real strict to what it, as a, it's gotta have been, caused by COVID.
I mean, I think it would be wonderful if we can get 3 subs. Is it realistic that we can have longevity going into the future that, the district is going to agree to have, 3 full-time subs every year? Probably not, but I mean.
It seems like, yeah,
Great for this, would be great for this year with the COVID situation and
you would
everything
have,
else.
yeah, if you have 2, I mean, I don't know we don't know what's gonna happen, whether we're, it's gonna be the 10 or 14-day quarantines or.
Yeah.
So it's kind of,
But there's also a thing that there's you use it or lose it kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's gotta be, the funds have to be used, so. I don't know.
The sustainability aspect is one of the most critical parts of the discussion. And like, even when I was making potential solutions, like under designated subs, I thought that would only be realistic for a year, only because of COVID. But then like the IT technician, like we could couch that salary in this for 1 year, but that position should just exist, period. Like it needs to be budgeted because tech needs are only going to continue. We're flying on the coattails of 1.5 individuals for entire.
it's become mandatory, not optional anymore.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, so when we're talking about bringing on people, then that's a different animal. And that's when those partnerships like what Dan was mentioning and Colleen was talking about with social workers, if there's a way to thread that needle to get the short-term benefit, but not the long-term encumbrance, that's a nice approach for sure.
How does this plan work? Is it it's a 3-year plan, but is it, your 33%, or can it be, 60% and, 40%, or how, are there any stipulations or guidelines
No, you just have until 2024 to spend it.
to spend? Okay.
Yeah.
You have to spend a little bit of a percentage. I mean, do you remember like the 2014 thing they were talking about, Dana, when that came out?
Well, there's the 20%, which you address
The learning loss.
is the basically learning loss. So they specify the 20% of your allocation and how it can be spent. That's primarily connected to summer enrichment and learning loss is where that ties into. And what you're finding is, I think you see districts going with a multiple approach. They are looking at some of the short-term stuff, the immediate needs, saying, okay, we can do this for 2 years, 3 years, knowing that it's going to go away. But then as on the other side is, and we've talked about this before, is supplanting. So we look at the programs that we currently have, and it might not, in this addresses your concern, Liam, it might not fall under the strict category of learning loss. So you earmark the money to areas that do, but then the money you save from that, you spend it elsewhere, and you have greater flexibility. And you see districts doing that, where they supplant through their current budgeting, they offset it with the ARP money, but then they spend what they just saved in areas that are outside the scope of, and all the things I've sat in, and they've talked about this, that is what they're saying districts are doing, and they say it's perfectly acceptable.
So Tim, when do you need to submit your,
So my hope is that by our next board meeting, the 21st, we can do a final presentation and just to make sure we're all in agreement about the priorities. And then that will give Dana and I ample time to submit it for the 30th. So this can be reflective. I mean, I will share this presentation with the board and welcome your thoughts via email, call me continuously like this. It's a vast thing to try and address. It's exciting too. I mean, I prefer to have this problem of spending money with not. So. Any other thoughts on how we should proceed? Ways we can improve the process?
no, I think it's great. I think all of your presentations are really clear and visually interesting.
Change the definition.
Yeah, do you think we should change the definition?
Yeah.
Let's go back.
Who else has got a problem with that? I'm just like, that might give us a little bit more clarity about what we're doing.
Define it. Sorry for the vertigo, just a second.
Board of Education?
No, it's under defining.
Yep.
And this, I mean, I conjured this at my desk.
No, I like
I'm not
it.
married to it.
I like it, but any disruption to student learning, operational capacity, improvement planning brought about by the pandemic, period. Eliminate that other word that I can't pronounce.
Exacerbated.
Wrong.
No, I think it limits the scope of, I think it limits the scope of this. But whatever, if no one's, that's just fine.
Are you seeing that slash as an and or an or?
I'm seeing that as a or.
Okay.
But I mean, one of the main things, the student subbing, the teacher subbing is certainly been exacerbated by COVID.
But it's
That
also
falls
been brought up.
Math certainly falls under that word. I don't know. Up to you, but I don't know.
Or
Can we just get a word that Liam feels more comfortable saying?
yeah, that might work.
Works in.
Impacted by.
Yes,
Impacted by the pandemic?
brought about or impacted by.
All right. Well done.
And one of the things, we go back to this definition, and we are currently using it, in addition to learning loss, but there's also, you can fall back onto the current guidelines in regards to avoiding layoffs. So when you're looking at, again, some planting and stuff like that, you can use the funds to help offset salaries where otherwise the district might have to lay off people because of budget constraints. So that kind of gives you flexibility there to where you can tie it to a position. Again, I'm going back to RTI
Yes.
Position or social work position, things like that, where you look at the whole. I use the term, and you brought it up, Rick, a while ago, is legacy. It's about going beyond sustainable, and you kind of do that. It goes back to you're shifting your resources to meet the needs of your district. And you count them in that way. I mean, that's how we're looking at it this year with $360,000. We're tying it directly to salaries to keep our budgets intact so that we can keep our enrollments and class sizes small.
So in that sense, you supplanted, right, Dana?
Yes.
So,
Well, it's a revenue source for us. We built it into the actual revenue stream this year, but it's being specifically earmarked for salaries. Yes.
that you had already budgeted for.
Yes.
So in essence, then, the feds, we have, not that we want to spend it, we have $1.1 million at our behest based on that sleight of hand to some degree.
Well, the money this year is truly being used as a revenue source. In
But
addition
us
to the-
leaving the money in the general fund that you would have otherwise spent on the same positions, right?
No, I mean, we to keep our tax levy zero.
Yeah, tax rate is zero.
So we're using appropriated fund balance of $400 and some thousand.
To offset the.
Yep,
Okay.
to offset the increase, we're using that specifically for salaries. Not to say we spend all of it, and we have historically been pretty good about not coming in over budget.
So we'll be discussing this later on, but the MOA that we'll be discussing, as well as the stipends for the COVID individuals, is that something that could fall under this?
Yeah, those are clear impacts of
Right.
these things.
Or would we be better off just finding other
I don't think-
solutions?
I don't think the scope, the financial scope of those is gonna be significant.
Okay,
Hopefully, unless the wheels fall off, but if the wheels fall off, we won't be using the coordinators like that. We'll be galvanizing the whole team, so.
Okay.
Joe, Martha, do you have any thoughts on any of the stuff? You see any value in anything here?
Absolutely. I'm interested in your thought process and the way you analyze and pick apart things, and it's very useful. Thank you.
John, anything there?
No, I like them all. I do think that the subs are something that I don't know.
Wonderful. You're gonna make the staff the happiest people in the world. I think I brought that up at the opening and they clapped. They literally clapped. So there's a need. Well, thank you, and I appreciate the dialogue on this. It's too important a thing because it speaks to who we are as a district. So I would never want to make these types of decisions myself. So I appreciate it.
Thank you for your work on that. Next for discussion, we have board retreat. Was an idea thrown out there. The pamphlet that I got in the mail, you know, said building a stronger relationship with the new superintendent. So thoughts on doing a retreat?
I'm all for it, but we gotta have like some donuts and coffee. Yeah, let's do a treat, like. Fair minimum, I'm not asking for much, but
Well, here's a thought too. I mean, does it have to be something, I mean, as it's on that topic, Dan, does it have to be something where we just sit in a boardroom and that's our retreat? Or can we be a little bit more creative with, if we're supposed to spend time getting to know the superintendent? I'm not saying we take a trip somewhere, but can't we have something that's a little bit more engaging than just sitting around the round table?
That's what NISBA offers.
Yeah, I think with NISBA, I mean, you can kind of change up their retreats somewhat, but not sure, you know, totally how much we could change. Or, you know, the other idea is,
let's just have it in the auditorium. I mean, geez, that would be a more fun than the.
I don't think food and drinks are allowed.
Darn it. I'm asking for a lot.
you have to make a choice.
Okay, all right.
You can't spill that cup of coffee.
All right, then just in here, coffee donuts.
To Colleen's point too, and I had articulated this, and I'm pretty sure Dan Hatch made fun of me almost immediately when I sent the email.
Probably.
Because yes, that would probably. Because in my excitement and haste to come, I hadn't moved yet. And I said, I'd like to, in the month of August, take some time to meet with each board member, wherever you like, doesn't matter. Just talk about why you're on the board, what your priorities are, and I'll share my educational philosophy with you one-on-one. That would be so informative to me too. And there could be multiple donut coffee sessions for me, unless you go to all of these. But that's another angle too, you know, because that's going to bring me the most value. I'm a collaborative person by nature. So if like already I'm thinking when math instructional things come up, like interventional things, like I want to just bend Colleen's ear a little bit and get a sense of that, you know. And so to know what those things are and how the interests of each board member here for me, that's another, the divide and conquer method would be something I'm happy to facilitate too. So I see value in either. I just want to say that.
So one year they all went out to
Evan Hill.
Heaven Hill. Yeah,
I don't know. I just think we need to define what the purpose of the board retreat is, and maybe we don't, I mean, is it necessary for us to go under maybe we just want to do an informal kind of board retreat that's not under the umbrella of NISBA, where we have a certain parameter that we have to follow. And personally, I'd rather see something much more casual, like a meet and greet, get to know people, versus sitting around again, table again, where we're because I think we attended one 2 years ago, and I'm gonna be honest with you, I personally thought it was somewhat dreadful. We just sat there watching a PowerPoint presentation for whatever amount of time,
Yeah.
huge amount of money was charged, and I left there thinking, well, that was great fun. I don't know, and maybe other people feel the same way I do, but why are we shelling out $1,000 or 1,500, whatever it was?
It's 2,000 for a
Well,
half
it was
day.
some ridiculous amount,
Yeah.
where we sat here and looked at a screen and anyway.
2,000. Pretty fun. half
Well, I
day.
was,
Yeah.
but what I was
That's
thinking,
insane.
that amount of money would have filled a lot of backpacks with food at the elementary school. So I struggle with that kind of concept of having a board retreat that you walk away and you don't get much from, so.
I think that retreat was focused on something specific.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Just the woman came and I just
Yeah.
felt it was just.
There was,
great.
yes. But I mean, if you go on the thing, the custom board retreats, it gives you some ideas of topics. I
No,
mean,
I think it's a good topic.
yeah, but
I
like,
think it's
there's
got-
another one
It
that's
is,
like,
it
that has a
has to
whole
be.
bunch of stuff on it, and and it's you guys who choose what to talk
Mm.
about. I think the last one was more on conflict that was going on.
But maybe if it's, just to, all of us get to know each other better, or, get to know you, Tim, on a more personal level, like your family and everything. Maybe it's like I'm sure it wasn't Heaven Hill going hiking, but maybe it's a great time to go to Heaven Hill and walk on the trails and sit out in the meadow under the apple trees and just sit there and get to know each other, and it wouldn't cost anything. But again, I don't know what people really want to do. If they really want the, boardroom presentation and that type, and that's fine too.
I like the idea of, doing it low key, more casual. Get to know Tim.
Maybe do a trust fall or two.
Who's pushing?
We can go to the adventure center.
Right.
And the trust thing where you have to like.
Like the kids went that year, and the adults went.
Something like this, a little bit more engaging. Anyway.
But the other concern with that is, right now, can we do something like that?
That's why I just said, just coffee and donuts. And let's keep it.
$2,000 budget for coffee. and donuts.
Yeah.
That's a lot of donuts.
Or one magnet.
For one day, yeah.
Maybe we should table that idea, spend our other money first.
It's possible, we can, table it and put it under old business, talk about it next time. Have people think about it.
Yeah, I think it's good. Let's
No, nothing happened.
table it.
I agree.
I would encourage everyone to take Tim up on his thoughts of, one-on-one, either, at wherever, Pickled Pig or, the Frozen Snake or wherever you want to meet.
That's just shoot the breeze a little bit, like just get the sense.
The other thing about having one-on-ones or, one-on-twos is the thing we struggled with early on with these board retreats is open meeting law and what can be discussed and what can't. And that's where I think NISBA came in, because they sort of had a good handle on that. So I agree with tabling it, but I would suggest maybe getting to know, why does Tim wear Hokas, type of thing.
I have several pairs. Socks don't match either.
But maybe I'm just wondering whether they've just suspended the open meetings law and maybe we can get around that now, at least for this year.
Yeah,
Maybe-
probably.
So table?
Table it.
Table it. Next under discussion is, BOCES board member want to thank Rick for his time and energy on the BOCES board. And they're looking for a replacement. Now, it does not have to be one of us. It was helpful when Rick was there, you know, as being a board member, and then he could come back and report to us. I know Rick has talked to some former board members to see if they would be interested. But it's, you know, we can have a member of the community, so would like everybody to, you know, think of a person or name that, you know, might be a good fit on the BOCES board and be able to come back to us, you know, after some of their meetings and report on what's happening. So I don't know if anybody else has any other ideas on how to fill this position.
Why is it our responsibility?
We have to pick it. You have to pick. Yeah, we vote on it. So it's preferable that we vote on our own.
Got it.
And remember, there's 11 districts, component school districts, and only 10 board members. So there's a potential that Lake Placid goes unrepresented. Long Lake, I believe it is right now, does not have a representative. So I think that would be the next step, is that, you know, if Dale wants to seek somebody out in the Long Lake area and have Lake Placid unrepresented, then that's, you know, the way that they'll go. So.
So that one there, you know, we'll also, I won't say table it, but homework for next meeting. See if you can come up with community member or, you know, somebody that we could put their name for. What's that? No. No.
What about you, Liam?
Yeah, also, if you know anyone in the trades.
Town attorney's the key now, so I got
I
another
think
Tuesday.
as well as trades. Well,
Town attorney.
just to form that programming for the kids.
Every second Tuesday. Hopefully this is gonna conflict.
Moving on to minutes was under consent. Then we'll go on to personnel matters. Would like to thank Rick and Tim for their suggestion of putting B through N under consent. These are teaching appointments, could be teaching staff or TAs. There are some resignations under here, but it'll just make it a lot easier than reading the same thing over and over, other than the name changes. We can still recognize, you know, some of these teachers under discussion, if they're retiring or leaving the district. So the recommended action is approve the items below, which are included in the personal consent agenda, items 7B through N. Look for a motion to,
Unless someone wants to remove any items from personnel.
would like to remove B. Okay. So we will change the recommended action to be approve the items below, which are included in the personnel consent agenda, items C through N.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so moved as amended.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Martha. Thank you, Joan. Any discussion? Not, please vote.
Seven yes.
Okay, motion carries.
Give me a second so I can make it be not consent. Okay, you can hit refresh. Oh, I did the wrong thing. Hold on. Did it come up for you? Did it change? Okay.
Yes. So 7B. Upon the recommendation of the superintendent, appoint Jeremiah Gillette, retroactive on September 2nd, 2021, professional certification in math 7 through 12, to the position of 7th grade math teacher in the middle and high school, replacing Haley Permonte in the tenure area of math effective September 2nd, 2021, for a 4-year term tentatively scheduled to conclude on September 1st, 2025. For the 2021-2022 school year, the salary will be $51,783. Step 6, Masters plus 33 of the Lake Placid Education Association negotiated agreement, July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2023.
High school.
We do an executive session prior to let us vote for personnel purposes.
Yes, we can.
So are you
We will,
going to table this and then we'll come back after the next one that we're going to table?
yes. We will table this, go into executive session.
Do you want to do that after you do the other one?
I think both of these could use some of that.
Okay.
B and N.
We will table this.
We need somebody to say table O. A board member to say we should table O into the executive session as well.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Is well, we have to go down to O and we have to open it up and then table it. And then the next thing you notice I put in there.
Oh, I see.
The
I was
proposed,
mixing up N and I apologize.
no, it's okay.
So O under personnel, the recommended action is upon the recommendation of the superintendent, approve the leave of absence of Frank Brunner, chemistry and physics teacher at the high school for the 2021-2022 school year. This leave may be amended in the future.
I move that we table this to executive session.
Yeah, I'll second that.
So we will go into a executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular person and collective. Oh, I'm sorry. Just to discuss the history and employment of history of a particular person.
Are we doing this now or at the end of the meeting?
No, you're gonna do it now.
We're gonna do
Do
it
it now.
now.
Okay.
And so you need the motion. Who's gonna make the motion?
I
I'll make a
move-
motion. Executive session.
Second.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you, Daniel.
Okay, and then everybody's yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Why would that be listed?
Okay, so at
Why would 11 in the morning?
It's impromptu.
So when you come out of executive session, you're gonna vote on the teaching stuff, and then I'm gonna copy the other one that you just tabled.
And you also end our live stream.
Yes, I'm gonna do that before I leave.